Hi, everyone. This is Tracy from TextRecruit. Thank you for joining us this afternoon to talk about mastering the candidate experience journey. We have Robin Erickson, who is the VP of Talent Acquisition, Engagement, and Retention Research at Bersin by Deloitte, who will be discussing the 6 most important moments that matter in the candidate experience journey. You will also be hearing from Raman Dhillon, the Senior Recruiter at Valvoline Research, who will be discussing her team's experience with text messaging throughout the recruiting process. We will be recording this webinar, and please join the conversation by asking questions and by tweeting #CANDEXP. Once again, thank you everyone for joining us, and I will now hand it to Robin.
Thanks so much, Tracy, and welcome to all of our participants. My name is Robin Erickson, and I've been part of Bersin here at Deloitte for the last almost 5 years. Before that, I spent 5 years in Deloitte's strategic talent group as a consultant, and the majority of my career before Deloitte in consulting. But it's really fun to be with you, and it's also really great to have Raman as my co-presenter. Raman, do you want to just say a few words?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Raman Dhillon, and I am a talent acquisition member of the great Valvoline recruiting team. I've been with the company for about a year, but I have about 12 years of additional recruiting experience. And I'm really thrilled to be here today to share our experience with you on behalf of my talent acquisition team. Thank you.
Thank you, Raman. And I'm looking forward to hearing a lot more from you during this presentation. As Tracy said, we'd love to have you join the Twitter conversation, and every slide has the hashtag. We'd also love it if you send any questions through the Q&A feature, and we will leave time at the end for both Raman and me to answer your questions. So with that, quickly our agenda. We're going to cover the candidate experience journey and the 6 moments that matter most to a candidate. Then Raman's going to talk about what they've been doing at Valvoline, and then we'll end with the key takeaways and a few questions. And with that, I'd like to transition to a polling question regarding the importance of candidate experience in your organization. So while Tracy's pulling that up, I'll just read it to you. It says, how important is candidate experience in your organization? It's extremely important. We're measuring it with selected and non-selected candidates. It's important. We're measuring it only with selected candidates. It's significant, but it's not being measured. And last, why should we care about candidate experience? So while you guys are answering that, I'm going to ask Raman about how important candidate experience is to Valvoline.
It is extremely important. We are measuring it with surveys, both with our selected and non-selected candidates. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the company, Valvoline is a leading premium branded automotive, commercial, and industrial lubricant and chemical company, but we also have over 400 quick lube service centers throughout the United States. And most of you, I hope, are our customers, and if not, I would really encourage you to check us out. And at Valvoline, we honestly strive to continuously enhance our processes every day to optimize our customer experience, but we also want to provide the same level of service to our applicants. So like I said earlier, we monitor that by surveying both our selected and non-selected applicants.
That's awesome, Raman, and that's definitely a best practice. You can see here Tracy shared the poll results. 30% of our audience are measuring candidate experience with both selected and non-selected candidates. Another 24% say that it's important. They're measuring it only with selected candidates. And another about 46% say that it's significant but not being measured. So we're really glad that you guys have joined in as well to learn more about the candidate experience, and hopefully at the end of this, you'll have a better business case for trying to actually make the case to measure candidate experience. So with that, Tracy, if you'd go to the next slide, I just wanted to show everyone that candidate experience, it's not just important in some organizations, it's a top global HR priority. Okay, so candidate experience is top global HR priority. Well, how do we know this? Well, every year Deloitte Consulting actually does what's called the Global Human Capital Trends, and It's a survey of, in 2017, it was a survey of more than 10,000 HR and business leaders across 140 countries. I just heard that this year's, the 2018 Global Human Capital Trends went to had over 11,000 survey respondents. So it's a lot of people. But we asked about 11 HR priorities, and you can see there that talent acquisition and employee experience measured number 3 and number 4, with 81% and 79% respectively of them being listed as most important by the HR leaders. And so definitely we found that it's important. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see we just this week actually published new research here at Bersin on, we call it our HighImpact talent acquisition research. And so those of you who are Bersin members should definitely check out our new publications. But personalizing the talent journey was one of the 6 key findings in our report. You can see here that we found 73% of high-performing talent acquisition functions focus on steadily improving the candidate experience, compared with only 17% of low-performing organizations. So just a little bit of input on that survey. We had over 1,200 respondents globally, and we were able to look at, well, what do the companies that are the top-performing ones, what do they do differently than the low-performing ones? And so that was one of our key findings. And if you go to the next slide, you can see some of more data that I just thought was relevant and that you would find interesting. We go through these. The green bar are the high-performing talent acquisition functions. The black bar are the low-performing talent acquisition functions. The huge difference, 3/4 to 1/4, communicate effectively with both selected and non-selected candidates. A little bit smaller, 69% in terms of marketing roles directly to candidates, 65% providing transparent feedback, and 62% engaging regularly with a talent network or community. So that research just came out this week, so I put it at the beginning of this presentation just simply to give you more information that we have on it, but also just to prioritize and help you understand the importance of these 6 candidate experience moments that matter that we're going to get started on. So if Tracy would go to the next slide, you'll see we're going to start our 6 moments that matter, and switch slides again. And this is our graphic that epitomizes all 6 moments that matter. And so we're going to go through all 6 of these and in a little bit of detail, and I can go faster or slower depending on how much time we spend on each, but we really want to highlight the fact that personalized communication goes underneath all of these. So if you look from left to right, an effective overall candidate experience journey begins by engaging positively with prospective candidates, starting with their very first interaction with the organization, and that's what we call awareness and interest, followed by the application process and how easy or not easy is it to go through your organization's application process. The third moment that matters, it's that recruiter interaction and the pre-hire assessments. And that's really the first time that a person from the organization may have maybe actually interfacing with a candidate. The fourth moment that matters are when the candidate gets to the level of doing the hiring manager and the team interviews, and what do those look like from the candidate's perspective. Fifth, you have the offer and acceptance, and it's the most overlooked of everything that ever happens with a candidate. So we just wanted to highlight it a little bit, make sure it's not overlooked. And then last, we've got preboarding. And I've had some people ask me, well, why didn't you end with onboarding, Robin? Well, we literally ended with preboarding is the last time someone is a candidate, because as soon as you start with onboarding, that person's a new hire. So we decided to stop our candidate experience with preboarding, and we'll talk about the importance of that. So let's start. If you go to the next slide, just a little bit more around awareness and interest. I mean, this really is where an effective candidate journey starts. If you can engage with them positively with prospective candidates with their very first interaction. And So let's go to the next slide and let's see, well, how do you do that? Well, you have to focus on your brand identity, and because it matters. All candidates, there's a lot of statistics out there, but all candidates are going out and looking at organizations. They're seeing what they can find on the internet. You know, I like to say that the war for talent's over because talent won. And why did talent win? Because of the internet, because of how easy it is for candidates to find out about an organization. You know, it's not just, you know, looking into an organization through a glass door, but perhaps even a glass wall now. I mean, you can find out anything you want to know about an organization on the inside. And I think organizations are learning, okay, so let's be part of that messaging then. And many talent acquisition functions actually have someone who's focused on employment brand. That's their full-time job. So, you know, here's just a few suggestions around how do you make sure that your employment brand, that impression of your company as an employer, can be perceived by candidates. Well, you need to keep your messaging consistent. 64% of candidates find that career websites are the most valuable source in researching potential employees. One more thing about company websites, and that is that we did some research here at Bersin around which sourcing channel provides the most candidates, and it actually was the company website. Many people will find a job opening someplace else on the internet, on a job board, or you know, there's advertisements in the professional networking sites, but they often will go and find that job then on the company website. And so it matters what your company website looks like. So you got to make sure that your brand elements are consistent around all of your social media channels. You want to provide engaging content on the company website. You want to make sure that you give candidates an idea of what it's like to work for the company. You want to have varied content. You want to have blogs or bios, videos, photos. Some organizations even have FAQs where there's someone, like I said, there's some employment brand strategists would actually answer questions. They might have chatting times, like they might have like an open Q&A feature or something like that. Definitely, you want to give the impression that your organization can be seen as a talent magnet to attract people to the organization. And last, around establishing the employee value proposition. The employee value proposition is what the organization offers to candidates. And so the employer brand is what it's like to experience it. And employer brand is important to both candidates who are coming in the door, but also to your current employees, because you're going to want to make sure that the employer brand actually lives up to what people were sold, what they were told about the organization when they were a candidate. And so I think of it as the bridge between, I think of employment brand as the bridge between attracting candidates and actually keeping them in an organization, or retention. Tracy, let's go to the next slide, because unfortunately, employment brand isn't being effectively communicated in the marketplace. And in our 2017 Global Human Capital Trends Report, we asked questions around, is your organization's employment brand communicated effectively in the marketplace? And you can see here, only 11% strongly agreed and 21% agreed that their organization's employment brand was well communicated in the marketplace. And over 40% of the respondents thought it wasn't. So that's significant. In terms of personalized communication, you see we're going to have a few call-out boxes like that. We just wanted to say, hey, look, individuals who aren't currently looking for a job may often consider a new position if they're attracted to an organization's strong employment brand. And so thinking about, well, what will make us, like I said, more of a talent magnet is really important. So Tracy, if you go to the next slide, the second moment that matters to candidates is the application process. And traditionally, it's been at this point in the process that many candidates, potential candidates, will walk away and they're discouraged because the application processes are so convoluted in many cases. And when they walk away, it causes the company to lose out on potential talent. So I want to transition now to a poll about bottlenecks in the application process. And so what do you believe is your company's biggest bottleneck in the application process? Are there inconsistencies across multiple application platforms? Are there redundant requests for information? How many times do you ask employees for their social security number, for example? Are there technological errors? Or is there confusion, do you think, that's caused by a lengthy and complicated process? So while you guys are thinking about that, before we ask Tracy to close the poll, I'm going to ask Raman, tell us about the application process at Valvoline.
So our application, I would say the biggest bottleneck would be in our high volume recruiting, just managing the number of applications coming in and the interest in responding to them in a timely manner would be the biggest challenge for the talent acquisition team for the Valvoline Instant Oil Change recruiters. We do have some lengthy processes, but we try to guide and help our applicants through those processes. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later, especially using TextRecruit. It's been really helpful when it comes to streamlining and just guiding and providing every step of the process, and just outlining that for our applicant has really helped with that bottleneck.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, Raman. And Tracy, if you'll close the poll, you can see here that we have the largest response around applicant confusion caused by a lengthy, complicated process, and then it's fairly well distributed between the others. My suggestion to you all is to actually apply for a job at your organization. Time yourself and see how hard it is, see how many times you have to go and chase down information. And then once you also might want to keep track of how many steps it is. And once you have actually gone through that, then you can definitely start to take steps to say, okay, how do we get rid of some of these steps? How do we make it less confusing? So that's a tip, but let's talk about more of the ways that you can make an easy application process pay off. So as Tracy's switching the slides, you can see, we have a graphic on the left, it sort of feels like that, when you see so many different lines going down into the funnel, so many different things that you have to do. And if you can create an easy application by eliminating these cumbersome, faulty applications, it shows candidates that you respect their time and you respect their willingness to be considered for a role. So some of the things that you can do to simplify your application process, you can make it direct, allowing your candidates to apply directly from LinkedIn by pushing a button. That works in many cases, or the company website if they've got their resume information posted somewhere else. Another thing you can do is to make it mobile. More and more, many people don't have computers, they have smartphones or tablets. And so the more you can do to make your application process easily accessible, making it mobile, the better off you'll be. Interesting, I was listening to one of the Candidate Experience Award winners talk about how they wanted people to apply for jobs in their organization, that literally they wanted someone to be on their commute on the bus or train on the way home from their job and be able to go to their phone and say, I'm so frustrated with my job, I want to be able to apply for another job right there on their phone while they're commuting to and from their first job. So that was their goal, so that if someone was frustrated, it'd be so easy for them to go somewhere else. And then last, think about how do you make it dynamic? Are you going to allow candidates to submit video cover letters? Many places have video interviewing, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but video cover letters are an even different way to try to be able then to sort through your candidates. So that is one of the things you can do. But if you go to the next slide, you'll see we did find that clearly there's room for improvement. I think our poll actually showed this just as well. But when we talked about how the application process was lengthy and cumbersome, but the 2017 Global Human Capital Trends Report asked their respondents whether or not an easy-to-navigate career website and online application would help candidate experience, and you can see the answers there. And the question probably was, how are you doing this in your organization? Is your career website and online application effective? Is it slightly effective, slightly ineffective? Only 39% said it was effective or very effective. So really important to, as you can see there in the key point, pay attention to your company values, your products and your services information, and employee testimonials, because they have the highest brand identity value to candidates. And think about, how do you make sure that your career website and your online application are simple and intuitive and as few steps as possible. All right, Tracy, if you go to the next slide, we'll talk about the third moment that matters to candidates, and that is around the recruiter interaction and pre-hire assessments. And these are among the first official contacts that candidates will have with an organization. And they're usually an integral part of a candidate's journey, simply because if they don't have a good experience with a recruiter or they're taking too many pre-hire assessments, they could walk away from the process. And what our goal is to make sure that the candidates have a positive relationship with the organization from the very beginning. I mentioned at the beginning, the combination of talent acquisition and employee experience. And so many people are focusing now on what is that employee experience like? Well, the employee experience starts with the candidate experience. So what kind of interaction are those candidates having? So if you go to the next slide, you can see how important it is to facilitate an engaging recruiter interaction and making sure that your pre-hire assessments are effective. So the first thing that you can do is to build stronger relationships between recruiters and hiring managers. And that is because in a previous study, we found that the relationship between recruiters and hiring managers had 4 times more influence than any of the other talent acquisition metrics that we had measured at that point. And to build these, you've got to make sure that your recruiters work with the hiring managers to know their teams. And so, one best practice that we've seen is that some recruiters are assigned to specific business units so that they really can learn about what that business unit is doing, and they can learn the culture of that business unit. And so then when they're looking to find people, they're actually able to tell them about, the culture of this, of not just the company that you'd be coming to join, but the culture of the team that you would be joining. So the only way you're going to do that is if you have strong relationships between your recruiters and hiring managers, and perhaps aligning them to specific business units, like I said, because recruiters need to understand how the business works, and sometimes aligning to specific functional areas helps them better articulate the role requirements. Third, you need to provide recruiters with toolkits and resources to improve their screening. And there's a lot of technology platforms right now, software platforms around how to screen employees. In fact, I laugh because there's even the ability of video interviewing to actually rank employees, candidates, and how well someone did in their interview. And you guys have all heard the statistics around how few resumes are read by recruiters, or if they're read by recruiters, it takes 10 seconds or something like that. So, making sure that recruiters have the toolkits and the resources to improve their screening, so important. Recruiters are overwhelmed and too busy, just like the rest of us. So making sure that they have all the tools that they need is important. One of the things that recruiters could think about are, what can they do to make their interview formats more effective, more innovative and effective? Telephone interviews are the most common in most cases, but you can also, like I said, use artificial intelligence or video interviewing. Those things have cut cycles down significantly. One other thing to think about is personalizing communications. And a best practice that came again from another candidate experience winner in the past was they actually allow, that recruiters actually allow the candidates to have their phone numbers. Or you could think about texting through TextRecruit, or and making sure that all of the candidates are aware of how to get in touch with the recruiter. So often when people apply to an organization, it's like you're applying to a black hole, and it's especially big companies. And we see it all the time. And how do you make it so that a candidate doesn't feel like they've just entered a black hole when they apply? So if you go to the next slide, Tracy, you can see that there are also some benefits of pre-hire assessments. And pre-hire assessments are those tests, basically, I don't know what else to call them, that are given to candidates to see how they rank, how do they do. And there's a lot of them in many cases, but they can help rank the candidates, but it can also give the candidates insight to what's valued the most in the organization. Because I understand that it's important to evaluate whether or not the candidates have the attributes, behaviors, and interests needed to perform in an organization's unique culture. But on top of all of that, these pre-hire assessments need to engage and benefit the candidates, giving them insights into what it's like to work for the organization. So, perhaps thinking about your pre-hire assessments, is there a way to tailor them for your organization and not just use off-the-shelf varieties of pre-hire assessments? One thing that, definitely possible for. All right, so if you go to the next slide, this is our fourth moment that matters the most to candidates, and that's when they finally get to having an interview with the hiring manager and the team. And it's really important because you need to educate and equip your hiring managers to screen and interview effectively. And, this is where your interviewers are focusing on the skills and the strengths that are the most needed in the position. So as we start to think about, this very important moment that matters, I'd like Tracy to pull up the next polling question. So the question is, do recruiters in your organization partner with hiring managers for candidate search? And, yes, they partner with them from the very beginning. Sometimes it depends on their requisition load, not very often, or, sort of wait, what? This is getting back to, the third moment that matters the most are the recruiter interactions, the fourth are the hiring managers. And so this relationship between the recruiters and hiring managers is so important. Raman, tell us about the relationship between recruiters and hiring managers at Valvoline.
It's most definitely an ongoing relationship, and I think to be successful, you most definitely need to continuously partner with your manager, not only to just understand the measurable and the technical aspects of any given job or role, but also to understand those little details that make the big difference that sometimes can be easily overlooked, like you talked about, understanding the culture within a certain team. So every step of the way, or at least when the rec is open, just having that initial conversation and understanding the technical as well as the cultural and non-technical aspects of the job is extremely important.
Completely agree. So thank you for that. Tracy, if you close the polls, you can see, oh, wow, that's really positive, actually, that recruiters partner with hiring managers in 59% of our respondents' organizations. Well, congratulations to you all. And for anyone who doesn't answer that way, start to think about what can you do to partner more effectively. If you're a Bersin member, we have a lot of content. I spent a year of my life, it feels like, writing about the relationship between partners and hiring managers. Maybe only 6 months, but it felt like a year. Anyway, thank you for that, Tracy. Let's go to the next slide. And this is about what can you do to create the most effective hiring manager interviews and team interviews. And so very important there in the middle of the slide is training on how to conduct interviews. And interestingly enough, in our high impact talent acquisition research that was just released, we actually found that training of recruiters and hiring managers was a significant differentiator for performance for high-performing talent acquisition functions. And it's a little bit unintuitive because you'd think that at a lower level, to get to the higher level, you'd have to be providing training, right? But the organizations that are the most high-performing are actually training both their recruiters, they're training their hiring managers, and looking at more than just compliance in training. They're looking at behavioral skills. How do you actually interview for behavioral skill training? How do you do a case? That's important as well. Many organizations ask their candidates to do a case interview, and do you know how to do that effectively? Do you know how to debrief effectively for that? So really important to think about what sort of training you have. Also important to think about what are the communication protocols, because communication is the basis for an engaging interaction with your candidates. And so, do your hiring managers know how to follow up quickly enough? Do they know what they can and cannot ask about? Again, compliance is not the be-all and the end-all, but it's very important to make sure that people know what sorts of questions they can and cannot ask. One of the organizations that I worked with, they actually train their interviewers as part of its Certified to Serve program, and they teach high-impact communication, and they have the communication preferences and cultural norms of the organization. And then last but definitely not least there on the far left are the tools and support. And it's really important to make sure that your hiring managers and their teams have access to what they might need. And so another company has actually created toolkits for hiring managers in multiple languages on an internal shared site, right, on an internal intranet. They created it themselves because they wanted everyone 24 hours a day to have access to the tools that hiring managers and their teams would need for effective interviews. And Tracy, if you go to the next slide, I realized as I had her move it that I didn't mention the applicant tracking system and why you might be looking at me a little quizzically at the moment. Why should the applicant tracking system matter for hiring manager and team interviews? Well, actually, if you can give your hiring managers access to your applicant tracking system, then they can actually be able to prepare better for their interviews. They can know what the candidate has done and what they need to be doing. So, and then I just wanted to bring up this point about how interview consistency is really important. There's different kinds of interviews, but you need to have consistent evaluation between the interviewers so that, if Sally loves to garden and Joe loves to golf and the candidate comes in and, they like to golf rather than garden, you don't want Joe saying, oh, this is a great person, instead of Sally, because and Sally's like looking at their skills and experience. Again, one more thing that's on the forefront of my mind is that it's really important not to be interviewing just for skills and experience, and not just for whether or not you'd like to hang out and have a beer with the person, but does that person share the values of the organization? Do you believe that they're ethical? Do you believe they have potential? Because so many people are changing their careers, not doing just slightly different jobs, but very different jobs. And so, are you hiring for potential? So again, every interviewer needs to apply the same predetermined system of measurement, but it's also important about, what are you interviewing for? So with that, let's go to the fifth most important moment that matters to candidates, and that's offer and acceptance. And think about if you're part of a large organization, when you joined, did you feel like you were about to become a cog in a much larger machine? And how do you make someone who's joining a company not feel just like they're a cog? Well, if you've handled your sourcing, your screening, your pre-hire assessments, your interviewing well, it will not be a problem at all to make sure that you can create an offer that's attractive to that candidate. So if you go to the next slide, we talk about how do you sustain engagement throughout the offer and acceptance phase, and how are you keeping your candidates enthusiastic especially for larger organizations where there might be some time in between the time you've verbally told a candidate that you're going to give them an offer and the time they actually get a written offer. So make sure that you give the offer directly to someone. Don't just email it to them. Make sure that you're aligning the offer to the candidate goals. Think about making sure that your offer letters are comprehensive. There's nothing worse than having an offer letter not contain all the important information and then having to actually resend an offer letter. Again, that's embarrassing to the company, but it's also sort of makes the candidate wonder, do I really want to work for an organization that can't get this right? It's also important to make sure that you allow the candidate adequate time to review the offer and make sure that, the role really will be a good fit for him or for her. And then, one more thing to think about, we talked about video interviewing. We talked about the potential of video applications, but, do you want to consider the use of video offers? There's nothing that could be more personalized than that. So just one more thing to think about. So if you go to the next slide, a few more things to think about. What are your personal messages? If the recruiter is telling the candidate that they've received the job, is the hiring manager following up directly? Is the hiring manager possibly making more introductions, right, for that candidate, for future coworkers? And, are you showcasing the culture to, again, if that candidate has any questions about whether or not they should join, are you showing them what it's like for real employees to be at the job, letting people understand what sort of environment they might be joining? And, the personalized communication tip is just make sure that both recruiters and hiring managers connect with candidates to tell them they'll be receiving a job offer and, importantly, offer their congratulations. All right, the next important moment that matters is around preboarding. And you've all heard the phrase coming out of England, mind the gap. And they typically use it for their train system, but there's a gap usually between when a candidate accepts an offer and when they join a company. So it's important to engage candidates through that time. And so we think it's really important that preboarding happen for a number of reasons. And it's that unofficial onboarding and making sure that you're just keeping in touch with candidates before they become an employee. So with that, I'm going to have Tracy pull up the last polling question. And just curious, does your organization have a preboarding program? Yes, we have a formal and robust program. Not yet, it's under development. Or third, no, all onboarding happens on or after day one of employment. So while we have you look through those and fill it out, Raman, what do you guys do at Valvoline around onboarding?
We definitely have a very robust preboarding program. It just gives a new hire an opportunity to read a lot of our information, employee handbook, with a number of other documents that they have to fill out. And it's required, actually, even before we could even schedule their new hire orientation. And it gives them an opportunity to really get to know us a little bit and ask any questions that they may have.
That's terrific. I mean, and that's definitely a best practice. So let's see what the results are, Tracy. 49% have a preboarding program. That's awesome. That's half. So hey, and 25% you've got it under development. 26%, that's great. Just a note for the 26% that say they don't have it, something to think about for trying to make your talent acquisition function provide a more effective, more personalized journey for your candidates. All right, I'm going to go very quickly through this last moment that matters, simply because I want to make sure we have time for Raman to share information on Valvoline. So, what's preboarding? It allows candidates to do the very boring paperwork before they start. Remember how many forms you had to fill out when you started your new job? What if a candidate could do that from home? You can build a preboarding portal and give candidates their login and a password. They could create a password for that. They can learn more about the organization. Definitely a place to consider gamification and learning opportunities. So say it's important at your organization that your employees have a really solid knowledge of Microsoft Office. So you could have onboarding in your preboarding site portal, you could have links to how these soon to be new employees could do learning before they started, so that they feel like they start and they've got a head start on learning that was going to be important to them. You can also then make sure you ask for feedback on the effectiveness and the ease of use of your activities. If you go to the next slide, Tracy, just, wanted to make sure we ended on the importance of measuring the candidate experience. It's at this time in the stage that, you can ask your candidates, accepted and rejected, about their experiences. And you can see here, you can monitor the social networks and third-party websites to see what candidates are saying. You can consider applying for industry awards and recognition programs, such as the Talent Board's Candy Awards. It's really important for consumer companies, for business-to-consumer companies, to think about, if I apply to your organization and have a bad candidate experience, how likely am I going to be to purchase anything from your organization in the future? And what if it was a cable company? What if it was a phone company? What if it was a clothing company? Think about those things that, you don't want your consumers to have a bad experience, because you want them to continue to be excited about your products. So with that, I am very happily going to turn it over to Raman to talk about Valvoline and how they've been trying to create a better candidate experience there.
Thank you, Robin. As Robin earlier discussed the need to provide your talent acquisition team with the appropriate tools, I would most definitely say that TextRecruit's been able to do that for us. It's delivered that the candidate excellence service that we're trying to provide to them. It not only affords us the opportunity to really reach out to a mass audience, but it also keeps our applicants actively engaged throughout the process, informed, as well as all parties that are involved in the hiring process really accountable every step of the way. And as you'll notice, we utilize TextRecruit throughout our recruiting life cycles, from posting jobs, advertising career fairs, any open interviews. We continue to inform and engage our applicants throughout the various interview stages. We even schedule times for interviews and even to discuss offers. We continue to guide them through their pre-employment contingencies, their onboarding, even orientation. So definitely a great tool to utilize. Next slide, please. So not only has this impacted our candidate response time from, say, several days down to just a few hours, as you'll notice, it significantly improved our application to hire rate. Our biggest challenge used to be just getting hold of the applicant, so endless phone tags or emails that end up in the candidate's junk folder. And now, with the ease of texting them, we're actually able to interact with them in real time. And it really gives us an opportunity. If there's an abnormal delay in the response, it's usually a strong indicator, or at least a red flag, that there either is another competition or there's something going on, and gives us as recruiters an opportunity to really perhaps correct the situation or take measures to draw the candidate back. Next slide, please. So earlier we kind of talked about the ease and ability to reach out to a mass audience, and this slide here is a really great example. If you notice, we were able to reach out to 787 applicants just with this one text, and we're able to inform them about an open interview event. And within 2 hours, we received 53 unique responses. 53 people responded to us within 2 hours. So needless to say, we love using this feature and utilize it at every opportunity to basically continuously advertise for our career fairs, our hiring events, announce open interviews, even community events. We actually even utilize it to contact our current new hires, just reminding them of our employee referral program and bonuses that the company offers. just a few factors to keep in mind that might be helpful while using TextRecruit is to keep your message pretty simple and straightforward, and definitely personalize it. Like Robin mentioned earlier, use the applicant's first name. It's pretty easy to do so in TextRecruit. Keeping it straightforward, just outline the next step. We use it, like I said, to guide our applicants through, just to guide them to their emails, guide them through the onboarding portals, instruct and remind them to bring certain documentation, and just track and see what works well for you and your organization and optimize that. And most importantly, understand and respect your candidates' timelines. And stay professional, but definitely have an opportunity to get creative. So I think everyone would agree with me when I say that in today's world, time is the most valuable commodity. And it is valuable to us as recruiters, and it's equally important to our applicants. And because we are connecting with our applicants in real time and empowering them to control the timeline of each process, it really gives them the ability to manage their time effectively and provides a better and a more personalized candidate experience. Thank you, guys.
Hey, thank you, Raman. I have a question for you. If you could go back, Tracy, what's the 77% there at the bottom of that slide? Raman, do you see the 77% circle?
The unique responses that we receive from 43, those are 43 messages that were being sent about their application being received, and 77% of those applicants responded to us within 4 hours or less.
Oh, that's terrific, because that's much faster than most response times. So
yes, most definitely. I mean, we literally used to spend days trying to get hold of our applicants, like I said, either playing phone tags or our emails would end up in their junk folder. And now as soon as we try to contact them, we follow up with a text message letting them know that we have tried to contact them, and we lead them with our direct phone line so they can call us back or text us with an appropriate time to reach out to them. It's made a significant difference.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, thank you for that. And Tracy, if you would go to the next slide, we're going to quickly go through the key takeaways, and then we do have some time for some questions. So if you have a question, feel free to add it to your Q&A feature. But on the next slide, you'll see we have 4 key takeaways for this session. Almost 3/4 of high-performing talent acquisition functions focus on steadily improving their candidate experience, compared with less than 20% of low-performing organizations. So just think about where you might fit in there, and possibly important to start thinking about, okay, well, how could you improve your candidate experience? Respect for candidates' time can be demonstrated by smooth, simple application processes. Definitely think about, Raman was talking about the importance of texting at Valvoline, and, that's a simple way to communicate. You can see the third one is organizations should send personalized communications between offer, acceptance, and onboarding to generate continued excitement. And then you can use candidate feedback to develop a culture of continuous candidate experience improvement. So with that, I'll have you go to the next slide, Tracy, and we can definitely spend a little bit of time going through some questions here. Actually, Raman, I'd love to hear from you for this one. The question was, when doing preboarding, do the soon-to-be new employees ask to be compensated for that time, particularly with those who are paid hourly? That actually isn't something I'd thought about before. You might be on mute. Okay.
No, I'm just thinking out loud, I guess. No, at the moment, that is not a practice that is in place. We definitely pay our hourly employees for their orientation time that they spend with us, but not for the pre-employment at the moment. Definitely something to think about.
Yeah, and like I said, I'd never thought of that before, but I could see how that could be an issue. I think if you're making potential trainings available to employees for things that are expected, I don't know that they should be compensated for trying to improve themselves, but you know, and maybe if you know if they're able to say, okay, well, the paperwork would take an hour, maybe we should pay people for an hour. That would be a nice surprise for somebody when they started. So, did you think of anything else, Raman?
I'm not sure if there are any challenges around, since they are not technically an employee and the I-9 verification hasn't been completed. I don't know if there could be some legal challenges there, but definitely a great thought.
I would say you definitely can't pay them before they complete the paperwork.
Well, the way that Valvoline does, we technically, since the I-9 verification has to be done in person, it's done during orientation, and our preboarding portal is set up so they get that done prior to even coming to orientation. So in our organization, we might have to change things.
Okay, no, I understand, but it's definitely something to think about. Another question came in, what are some best practices in monitoring applicant tracking systems? And so I was talking about applicant tracking systems simply because some of them are available, some TA functions make their applicant tracking systems available to hiring managers and some don't. Raman, what does Valvoline do? Do you make your ATS available to your hiring managers?
Not the applicant tracking system itself, but we do have great ways of communicating on a very regular basis down to, you know, even how many applicants have applied and how many are in the interview process, and keep them informed throughout the process. And as individual interviewers are going through their, several first, second, and third round of interviews, everyone's kept basically informed, including the applicant and all the managers involved, as to where the applicant is every step of the way in the process.
Oh, that's terrific. That's terrific. Yeah. And then a question came in, is what is considered an adequate amount of time for an applicant to review an offer? Raman, I'd love to hear what you guys do. I would say at the minimum a week, but we haven't actually measured that, so I don't have an official answer for you. But Raman, do you know how long your applicants are given to review their offers?
Couple of days, actually. We'd like to move fast, especially in our high volume auto technician side of things. We usually get responses within 24 hours.
Okay, terrific. I think maybe it depends on the level of the job, right? And it probably is different for hourly versus non-hourly. I do know that the higher up, if you get to executive recruiting, many times an executive candidate will have their attorney review an offer with them. So, and at that point, then you obviously need to provide more time. So.
Most definitely. I agree with the technical recruiting, and definitely depends on the level of recruiting, but we always like to provide adequate time and, just communicate that as long as we are in constant communication and understand what's happening and why the applicants are taking, if it's just to review certain details, or if they just stop responding to us, that's a red flag.
No, I definitely agree. Here's another question, Raman, that I think you are well suited to answer. Is TextRecruit an automated tool? Do messages automatically go out to candidates as they are moved from stage to stage? TextRecruit probably would be able to answer that question better. We utilize it. We are able to mass export our applicants into their database and send one text, and we utilize it quite often on an individual level. But the automation question, I would address that to TextRecruit. They may have that ability. I'm not aware of it. Tracy, do you want to chime in here on automation?
Yeah. So you're able to communicate one-on-one with the candidate. You're also able to create campaigns and mass text. But we also do have an automation feature called ARI, which ARI can basically finish high volume tasks for the recruiter. So the example is if you're asking several questions over and over again to the candidate, such as how much do you want to get paid, where are you located, what position are you interested in, Ari will be able to answer all those questions.
Okay, terrific. Another question came in that's similar. Do you ask as part of an application permission whether or not you can send text to mobile phones? What sort of permissions are there for texting?
Yes, so we do stay compliant by having a unsubscribe feature. So if the candidate doesn't want to be texted, they can unsubscribe from those texts.
Okay. Do you do anything specifically, Raman, at Valvoline before texting candidates?
No, very similar to what we just discussed. We send out them, the first initial text they receive is that we have received their information and send them our contact information with the option of unsubscribing if that's what they want to do. And if they do not want to hear from us via text, they're able to do so.
Okay. Well, and here's a comment that came in from an audience member, and it's a great idea. What about a bonus for completing your paperwork by X date? Definitely another thing to think about, right? Rather than people want to be compensated. Definitely could think about, a bonus for having people complete their paperwork by a certain date. All right, I'm just going through to see if there's any other question for Raman. Is TextRecruit integrated with your ATS?
It is. We use iSIMS, and it is integrated into our system. So if we have an applicant's information up on our screen, and we click on their phone number, for example, it gives us the ability to text them right away.
Well, and it says, is there a value to using it through an integration or through the Chrome extension? Tracy, do you have an opinion on whether or not
I think it really
one of those is better?
I think it really depends on the recruiter's decision. Some people don't even use the Chrome extension and they just use the ATS, and then vice versa. So it really depends on the company and their goals.
Okay. Well, I think we are at the top of the hour. Thank you so much, Raman, for joining me and for all of the insights on Valvoline. And thank you very much to all of our participants who joined us today, and hope that you were walking away, like I said at the beginning, with a better business case for the importance of a candidate experience.
And I also wanted to thank the Bersin team as well as the Valvoline team for all their efforts. And if you do want to see a demo of TextRecruit, please visit us at www.textrecruit.com.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, everyone.